The southeast of the UK is a brighter picture, generally fine here throughout the day, and brighter towards the north and northwest with just 1 or 2 showers around at times. In the sunshine towards the southeast becoming very warm, 23 or 24 degrees, the mid-70s in Fahrenheit, and even towards the north not bad at 18 Celsius. As for Monday, well, that band of rain will pep up once again across that central slice of the UK, so parts of Wales, the Midlands, northern England, even the southwest of England could see some rain at times on Monday. Brighter with a few showers towards the southeast and generally turning a bit brighter with scattering of showers as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Albie Amoncona, Emily Carver, Lewis Oakley and Diane Spencer. Tonight on the show, bag off Annie Beebe, GB News is winning.
More black Britons should be black, British and proud, just like me.
Suella Braverman should take up the Archbishop of Canterbury's offer to meet to discuss migration.
Despite the distractions, we still need a Minister for Men.
And Rishi Sunak's attempt to teach pupils maths till they're 18 is a serious miscalculation.
It's 7 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5, the best Saturday night takeaway that you could order. And tonight, it's 2 for the price of 1 as we're serving you a special, extended Saturday 5. Expect fiery debate, spicy opinions and a huge topping of fun. Every week you join Albie, Emily and myself along with a guest star. Tonight we've got 2, Diane Spencer and Lewis Oakley.
We do indeed. Now, it's been a week thicker than a Brussels bureaucrat's rulebook, hasn't it? But guess what? It is Saturday night. So why not strap yourself in? We're kicking off with a proper barnstormer of a row, as usual. Once we've got that all off our chests, we'll swerve into some light-hearted banter that's as shameless as a politician caught fibbing. Are you ready? Let's get this show on the road. And of course, we want to know your views as well. Please do get in touch as usual. Email us gbviews@gbnews.com. Get us on social media @gbnews. But before we start tearing each other apart, it is your Saturday Night News with Aaron.
Very good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. The family of the school coach driver who died in a crash on the Wirral yesterday have described him as a loving husband and father. They say Stephen Shrimpton suffered medical issues at the wheel of the coach. The 40-year-old was a father to 2 children. 15-year-old Jessica Baker also died in the crash. 4 other children were taken to hospital, including a 14-year-old boy whose injuries are said to be life-changing. Dozens of Conservative MPs have signed a pledge to never again vote for an increase in overall taxes. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss and Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former party leader, are amongst those who have signed up, along with 7 former cabinet ministers. The promise means they won't vote for the Chancellor's autumn statement if it contains tax rises, putting further pressure on Rishi Sunak ahead of the Conservative Party conference. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, has told The Times today he wants to stop the vicious circle of ever-rising taxes, but has ruled out cuts in the short term.
All too often, we have seen these promises and pledges made by MPs across the political divide that haven't materialised. That is why this tax pledge is different. It isn't connected to the Conservative Party. It is a direct pledge from me to my constituents in Rosendale and Darwen and to the British people that I will not vote to put taxes up. It's for keeps. It is a pledge that I will stick to as long as I am a Member of Parliament.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister says he is slamming the brakes on the war on motorists. Rishi Sunak, who's arrived in Manchester ahead of tomorrow's party conference, is expected to address the issue this week. He told The Sun harebrained schemes like low-traffic neighbourhoods and 20 miles per hour zones are being forced on drivers. And the Department for Transport says guidance will be reviewed to prevent their blanket use in England. The ASLEF union has denied that today's train strikes are politically motivated after the government said it was planned to coincide with the Tory party conference. Train drivers at 16 operators in England walked out in a long-running dispute. Many parts of the country had no services at all, and those that did run finished earlier than usual. Hundreds of demonstrators have staged a protest against the Rosebank offshore development. They were rallying in central London earlier, demanding the government reconsider approval for the controversial oil field. It's located 80 miles west of Shetland and is the UK's largest untapped field. It's estimated to contain up to 300 million barrels of oil. This is GB News on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker too. That's it from me for the moment. Back in an hour. Now it's over to the Saturday 5.
Thanks, Aaron. It's Saturday night. I am Emily Carver and this is the Saturday 5. So let's crack on with the show. First up, it's Darren, who's got a few things to say about our taxpayer-funded national broadcaster. It's time for Grime Time.
Yes, talking about the BBC, something new, eh? Lo and behold, though, the BBC Newsnight suddenly had an epiphany. They confessed that they could have done better on impartiality during a panel packed with hysterical hyenas calling for GB News to be shut down. It's akin to a football referee owning up to a dodgy call after his own lad nets the winning goal. Right, you're a day and a pound short, BBC. And what's next? A heartfelt apology for allegedly sending a car for Russell Brand's nocturnal adventures with a teenager? And let's not even start on your cinematic rerun of Jimmy Savile, a veritable monument to your own sordid history, but still they think the BBC think they can lecture everybody else. Adam Bolton, formerly of Sly News, was on the Beeb calling for us to be shut down. Could it be that Angry Adam is a bit miffed GB News is soaring, rocketing up by 500% according to Press Gazette? And I'm not gloating, all right, maybe I'm gloating a smidgen, but could it be that shutting down a successful competitor may well suit the man? And let's have a moment for Caroline Noakes, an MP so obsessed with trans self-ID that she's clearly choosing to self-ID as a Tory MP, despite being a Lib Dem. She told the BBC she doesn't appear on GB News, despite appearing 9 times. 9 times. Maybe she doesn't know what a woman is because she's suffering some form of memory loss. Who knows? The truth is that the wrinkled old elite of broadcasting would throw a bloody street party if GB News folded, but here is the kicker. First, they ignored us. Then they ridiculed us. Now they're going after us with pitchforks because we're winning, thanks to you, the British people. You aren't letting these upper-crust snobs dictate your news diet. They tried to shove us aside like they did with our Brexit vote, but we're not going anywhere. So get used to it, and frankly, bring it on.
Woo!
Thank you very much, thank you very much. I mean, it's been quite the week, Emily. I'm sure you'd agree you've been on the telly more than the adverts.
It has been quite the week, and we're talking about the BBC here, and I found it quite astounding, actually, the lack of balance on that BBC Newsnight panel. It seemed to be their leading story, yet they couldn't find someone who would be on the side of a free press. It was quite extraordinary. Yep. We know we are Ofcom regulated. Every broadcaster is in this country. And for someone like Adam Bolton, who I used to have a huge amount of respect for, can come out and say that it should be shut down, and then he said the same thing on another broadcaster too. And I'm just scratching my head here because I thought no one was watching GB News, so why are they so bothered?
Indeed. I mean, Diane, did you think, hang on a minute, Adam, you've gone way too far, BBC Newsnight, you've gone way too far? I mean, I've seen more balance on a Chinese Communist Party assembly, you know?
Well, the BBC's always been like this, though. I don't know the amount of time. You see, I do a lot of driving as a comic, and the amount of times I'm sat in the car and the news comes on and I'm yelling at the radio, that's not news, that's the BBC internal email. Like, recently, the top story on Radio 4 was about, oh, now thanks to the Gary Lineker debacle, we've sent this thing round. And it's like, no, that's an internal email, darling. That's not the news.
Diane, why aren't you listening to GB News Radio?
Because I've got an old car.
Right.
So I haven't got DAB radio. I'm in a Nissan Micra. If I want to overtake anyone, I have to book it in and send them an email.
It's true, actually, the car I drive doesn't have DAB radio. I need to get an upgrade.
Yeah,
need to get an upgrade.
An EV.
Yeah, need to get an EV. No. That's the only thing that's going to be allowed in London anyway soon. So, yes, EV next with a DAB radio so I can watch GBN radio every single moment of the day.
But I mean, Albie, you're someone who has enjoyed being on BBC panels in the past, right? You are someone a bit more sympathetic, I think, about the BBC, towards the BBC than maybe the rest of us are. But you must have been watching it. Even you, Albie,
That's why I was so disappointed with the BBC Newsnight panel, because I think what people love and cherish about the BBC is that balance when it does work. It doesn't always work, Diane. You're totally right to point out that there are times that the BBC is not impartial. And they displayed that on Newsnight earlier on this week with Adam Bolton, Caroline Noakes and whoever the third person was. I mean, how they couldn't find
I must just come in to say that the BBC, sorry to interrupt, but the BBC has said that they did try to get some balance.
Well, they didn't call me. They didn't call me. They've got our numbers.
But they did admit that they didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, well, they clearly didn't try very hard at all. I mean,
they didn't.
You know.
They have... Emily and I appear on BBC shows. It would not have been hard for a producer from the BBC to call someone from GB News, like Good Morning Britain did, to go on that show and give the other side of the argument, and they didn't do that.
Lewis, on a philosophical point, I guess, do you think, is it troubling for you, as someone that I assume believes in press freedom, that you see the state broadcast broadcaster with a massive monopoly backed by the licence fee, calling for what is essentially media censorship.
Oh, yeah, I think it is. And I think that what the BBC struggles with, that you guys at GB News have really got down, is having the conversations that people are having up and down the country in their living rooms. Whenever I've been invited onto the BBC, or whenever I pitch something that is a news topic to go on, I've always found it's all through a specific kind of London bubble lens that doesn't really resonate. And I think that is probably their issue, is that, look, there are some discussions that go on this channel that I don't agree with, but that's why we have the discussions, right? Whereas I think on the BBC, they just wouldn't have the discussion at all, and it's not representative of what is being said up and down the country.
What I don't understand is how they don't have any self-awareness, or don't appear to have much self-awareness. This is a channel that's been around for, what, 2 years? If you just decided based on one unfortunate incident to shut down a broadcaster, then we wouldn't have a broadcasting landscape or a broadcasting ecology, as Adam Bolton said. So it's just absolute nonsense. And I'm sorry, but this channel stands for free speech within, obviously, Ofcom regulation, because that's what has to happen in this country. And we should respect that, and also respect people's right to speak.
You see, what I found hypocritical, particularly about Adam Bolton, is that he talks about this broadcast ecology, as he put it, as a current Times radio presenter, which is a new media organisation, as a former Sky News presenter, which was a new media organisation back in the noughties. You know, he is a product of new media organisations, so why is he calling for a new media organisation to be shut down so we don't get the opportunities that he has?
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because, essentially, Adam Bolton is a snob, in my opinion. I think the man smacks of pomposity, and actually he looks down at the likes of GB News and the people who are watching it.
Yeah, of course, a lot of people enjoy Adam Bolton, have enjoyed him over the years, have respected him over the years.
Do if you judge him by his viewing figures. I mean, he'd probably get more at a bloody children's picnic.
Look, I've been interviewed by Adam before, and he was perfectly nice to me, and I listened to his Times radio show occasionally, but I think the way that he has spoken about GB News this week has been really disappointing.
It's just been so over the top.
Yeah.
They're absolutely ludicrously over the top.
Why? Is it fear?
And
are they scared?
Well, I think that it is. I think they thought GB News would be around for maybe a year. It wouldn't get any viewers because there's so many other programmes that people can tune into, so many other broadcasters. It will be a flop, and it hasn't been. And it's a proper competitor.
What I think that these people forget as well when they're shrieking and hollering is that there's a whole huge fleet of people behind us. We are, like us five here, we need that whole huge room of people that the viewers can't see. And their jobs are here as well. And they don't agree with everything that's said on the channel. And just because a few things are said that are wrong, and yes, Ofcom should investigate, because that's what Ofcom are there for, but that doesn't mean that you should suddenly shut down an entire channel that's trying to bring balance to this landscape.
I also think for Adam, you know, if he has his way, his viewers aren't going to go to our viewers aren't going to go to him anyway. So tough luck.
So stay with us.
Yes. Anywho, up next it's Albie, and Albie thinks that black Brits should be black, British and proud. It's time for Albie's argument.
I most certainly do. This week, a survey which I found quite shocking of 10,000 black Brits found that the majority of black Britons do not feel proud to be British. Now look, I have always said there are racial disparities to close in Britain, whether or not they're in healthcare, in employment or in criminal justice outcomes. But despite that, I'm black, British and proud, and I think more of us should be, and here's why. Commonwealth migrants, like my grandparents, moved to this country in the mid-20th century to contribute to our economy, our culture, our arts and our public services like the NHS. Their descendants, like me, continue that contribution today, doing things that our ancestors never thought black people in Britain could do. We're in Parliament, in offices like the Foreign Office. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, is a black man. Our former Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, although he didn't last that long, is a fellow Ghanaian and black. Like me, the amazing Kemi Badenoch is a business secretary. We're running British national treasures like John Lewis, and we're winning medals and breaking records like Sir Mo Farah. Now, we have so much to be proud about in this country. And of course, there are things about Britain which I dislike. There are things that people dislike about Britain that I'm sure you don't like about Britain at home as well. But you're still proud to be from this country. And that's why I think more people should be black, British and proud, and why that survey does not reflect my feelings about this country, and we should really all feel proud to be British. Look, I wonder, Diane, if I have got this totally wrong, because I've always been really proud to be British. I've never felt this dissociation from being British. But clearly, lots of black people in this country do. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I only really got my sense of being British when I actually emigrated, and I lived in New Zealand for 4 years. And when I was away from my own culture and away from being British, I suddenly sort of felt what it was, and it was weird. And when I came back, I was like, oh my God, I'm back. I need double egg, double bacon, cup of coffee. And suddenly I got like really angry about the traffic, and I was like, oh, it's good to be back. But I don't know why. I mean, obviously, like, when I've spoken to my friends who are black and they have, you know, different sort of lineages, and they say, oh, yeah, my auntie's from Ghana and things like that, and I'm Scottish Nigerian, but I've never actually asked them, are you proud to be British? Because it's a weird question. I wouldn't ask my white friends if they're proud to be British. I wouldn't ask my Asian friends if they're... It's interesting. How many people were in this survey?
10,000. There were 10,000 people
and out
in
of
this
the
survey.
10,000, all of them?
No, so it was the majority of black Britons didn't feel proud to be British. I think it was 51%. So it was a small majority, roughly 50-50. But still, to think that around 50% of black people are not proud to be British is something which surprises me. Another thing which surprised me, Darren, and I think we can get up an image of the St George's Cross, I'm going to pull it out of my magical hat, is that a lot of people do not associate, a lot of black people don't associate with being English. They see being English and the English flag as being associated with whiteness. Do you think that only white people can be English and that black people can't?
No, absolutely not, no. And I to be honest with you, Albie, I think the whole denigration of what it means to be British is an import from the United States of America, right, where actually not just black people, but whole swathes of people are being told that actually to be British is to be bad, inherently evil, a unique evil to the world, when actually I you know, obviously reject that in every way, shape or form. So I don't like that this is happening, but I'm afraid to say it is the natural occurrence that comes from importing culture wars from the United States.
Yeah, I think also what's quite interesting is if you ask that question to young people of all ethnicities, white, Asian, black, you might get a similar response. And I think that's totally depressing. And I think it's because we do, and I don't think this is overstated, we do often concentrate on the negatives of our history. A lot of people you hear say, Britain doesn't have a culture, you know? And it does. It's all of the things that we've come to know. Our history of liberal democracy, the Christian background of the country, music, sports, inventions. The way we live, essentially, is part of British culture. That is British culture. And I think there needs to be more, you know, it sounds a bit cheesy, but celebration of what has made Britain great and not always concentrating on the negatives. I think a lot of people think, you know, we're a racist country.
But why do you think they think that, Louis? Because yes, of course, we did once have the biggest empire in the world. Lots of people know that. But not many people know that we also led the world in abolishing slavery. So why aren't we taught about things equally and properly?
Well, do you know what? I ask in this situation, where are the grandparents? I know that seems odd, but as someone that is mixed race, who physically would not exist if it weren't for 2 generations of black and white people loving each other, working together and living in this country, I wouldn't be here. And my granddad, who was part of the Windrush generation, told me what it was like when he came to the UK and how much those people have changed the country. You know, I know... For the better. For the better, yes. And I think that's the thing, you know, you don't have some of the horrific stories he told me about, you know, not being allowed in certain bars because of the colour of your skin and being chased down the streets with weapons. That still happens, but nowhere near, you know, as common as it did then. And I think that makes you feel proud from that aspect of, well, we've changed the country for the better, and, you know, we're more side by side. And I think that kind of not being able to see or not having anyone there to tell you, like, this is how it used to be, and I'm not diminishing that things aren't perfect, but I think that if you could see kind of how things have changed in just the last 50, 60 years, you would really feel proud of what we've achieved.
And Louis, I didn't know you were mixed race, but do you think there's anything in Darren's argument about the importation of American-style race relations, things like critical race theory and BLM, focusing on the differences in society that are perhaps making respondents today in particular, after all of that Black Lives Matter stuff in 2020, feel less positive about being British than they might have done in 2019 before BLM?
Yeah, I think there is. They say when America sneezes, we get a cold, and I think that because we can understand them and they all speak English, I think those ideals do come over, and it's not exactly the case. The majority of people that are in the US that are black are probably descendants of slaves, where it's not the case here. People came here, so it's a different setup, it's a different thing. Again, not perfect, but I do think that the culture is very different. So, I don't know how we get past it. I think it comes with, people understanding the British history of black people, but, also listening to them as well. That it's not perfect. That's the thing.
Diane, how do you respond to what Louis has just been saying?
Well, I question whether it's more to do with nationalism than race, because, as you said, you use that phrase, we did this, we did that. I mean, we are sat here and we sort of organised what we were going to say. That's what we did. But in the past, we, that big we that kind of encompasses what a country does. And the whole idea of nationalism has sort of been lost because we've lost faith in the system. We've lost faith in our royals, for example. You find out that Prince Charles is having an affair and he's actually a very grumpy man who kind of can't use a pen. And you get angry at the royals. You've got Harry and Meghan, and you go, what is this? It's all falling apart. And the politicians just seem to lie to us and raise our taxes. So because you lose faith in the system and they represent the British establishment, I think how much is it nationalism not to do with race?
Yeah, there's a lot to do with that, right. But still to come tonight, I've got a message for Suella Braverman in the Carver Palaver. Lewis thinks men do need their own minister, and Diane's concerned Rishi Sunak's policies aren't quite adding up. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
in a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, cheers very much for your emails about tonight's topics. So on the EV argument, Emily suggested buying one. Neil's written in and he says, Emily, please don't get an EV. They are not the future. And if you watched Uncensored Info, you'd know that there's a fire issue from unstable batteries. But then Terry Terry says about your DAB radio that you want in this electric car. He says it'll put so much drain on your battery that you'll hardly get to the main road. So there
That's
we
true,
are.
isn't it? Weren't there cases of people couldn't put the heating on? Remember when it got really cold and they had to choose between heating or being able to drive, a few miles?
I mean,
so there you go.
It's quite something. On the BBC and GB News row earlier this week, Julie's written in and she says the Newsnight interview was shocking, really. I think we all agree on that. Barbara says, I've complained to Caroline Noakes, woke joke, no reply. I've complained to Rishi Sunak about Caroline Noakes, no reply. Well,
you're going to have to wait longer than that.
You are.
You might get one. You might get one in a couple of months' time.
And then on Albie's segment there on being black, British and proud, John says it makes me sad that some black people don't feel that they have a share in our British culture. How can we fix this, though? It seems like such a sensitive topic. That's a good point, Albie, isn't it? That people just don't feel that they can even talk about that.
We've got to talk about these things. If we don't talk about them, we're not going to find solutions. So I'm glad that this research has come out, but now let's all solve it.
Yeah. Now, up next then, it's Emily. And Emily has got a wee bit of advice for Suella Braverman. It's time for the Carver Palaver.
Yes, I'm not sure she's listening. This might not be a popular view, but I think Suella Braverman should speak to the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, about immigration. It's been reported that so far she's said no thank you to the offer to meet with him. So now perhaps it's not unsurprising that she's not too interested in taking up the opportunity. She's a busy woman, and Welby hasn't exactly been her biggest cheerleader, has he? In fact, he's wasted no time at all telling the world how evil her plans to stop the boats are. He branded her plans to deport migrants to Rwanda as morally unacceptable and even against the judgment of God. He also said the use of the word invasion to describe those crossing the channel is harmful rhetoric. So again, it's hardly a surprise that she's not in a rush to sit down with the man. But surely there's no point only speaking to people who agree with you. It could even be a chance to find some common ground. If I was Suella Braverman, I'd quite like to ask him whether he even believes in borders, whether he thinks it's realistic for the West to provide a home to anyone from anywhere who wants to come here. If he says no to that, I'd ask what the limit should be in his view, considering net migration was, 600,000 plus last year? And while she's at it, what would he do to stop the boats if indeed he wants to? So, stubborn Suella, it may be the last thing in the world you want to do, and I know you're very busy indeed, but you'd go up in my estimation somewhat if you were the bigger person and had a cup of tea with Justin. Well, there you go.
Emily,
what do you
think? Sounds like an argument I would make. Did you miss me last week?
Well, I did miss you terribly, yes. Were you not here last week?
No, I was in Ibiza.
Oh, of course. You was in Ibiza, all right for some, eh? You're looking well for it. You're looking well for it. You know what? I just think that Suella Braverman is a controversial character.
Yeah.
Lots of people vehemently disagree with her, and a lot of people slag her off for her rhetoric. One of those people is Justin Welby. So why not meet him for tea, hash it over, try and find perhaps even a little bit of common ground, because I believe most people are fundamentally good people. Don't you think, Darren?
Well, I think the man's wetter than an otter's pocket, and that there's absolutely no point in wasting Suella Braverman's time with this. He might as well be a Lib Dem parish councillor. He's so bloody useless. Honestly, I think Justin Welby should be occupying his time in saving the Church of England, the established church of this country. I don't think you do that by telling people, the majority of this country who actually want border controls, that they are going against God. I think that's a deeply divisive thing to say, actually.
But you're saying that, so Diane, shouldn't he be challenged on what he's saying. Shouldn't Suella Braverman meet him to challenge him?
Yeah, and the challenge she can lay down is, tell you what, you go stand at the English Channel, part the sea, and whoever can then walk across will let them in, because that was clearly the judgment of God. I mean, the only reason why I think Suella Braverman should sit down with Justin Welby is because that man, being very high up in the church, knows what a good chutney is. He also knows what a good cake is. He's had to try them all. He's had to rank them all. He's given out thousands of awards for courgettes. That's the only reason why Suella Braverman should waste her time and meet with him to have a nice carrot cake.
But given that he is one of the most senior clergymen in the country, you know, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Suella Braverman is one of the most senior politicians in this country, the Home Secretary, they actually both have a fundamental role to play within our politics. I mean, the Archbishop has got a seat in the House of Lords, for example. If we're going to have bishops in the House of Lords occupying our legislature, don't you think they should be making opinions, and don't you think politicians should engage with them?
No, he's not elected. No one elected him to do anything. It's none of his business.
That's why we've got bishops in the Lords.
Let's get Lewis's opinion on this one, because I can understand both sides on this. I think mine might be a bit of an unpopular opinion tonight, which is rare, of course. But Lewis, do you know what? He's saying all of this negative stuff about her policies. Perhaps sometimes he has a point, perhaps sometimes he has absolutely no point. But don't you think Suella Braverman, if she spoke to someone like Justin Welby, who does represent a lot of people's view, he does,
Fine.
he does, you know. No, he doesn't. More people support Suella Braverman, but some people do support Justin. Justin sounds so colloquial. But don't you think it's a good idea, no?
No, I don't think it's a good idea. I think what you're proposing is basically a PR move. It'll look good if she goes and does it. It's not going to solve the problem, is it? He's not going to change his mind. And I don't even think if she brought him on board, it's not like all of a sudden she's going to get all this extra support. She's not bothered. She wants to be Prime Minister. She's not worried about her eternal soul. She doesn't have to do it. I just don't see what the point is for her. And he's not elected.
And it's very
no one
bizarre.
voted for him.
Yeah, no one voted for him. And it's very bizarre because the whole idea of religion is that you pay your credit and you get what's owed to you. That's the whole point of religion. You pay your credit, you get what's owed. Well, there's a lot of people in the country who are paying their credits and they want a working health system, they want roads that work, they want housing, and they're not getting any of it. So they're like... But Suella has to sort it out. But having the guy who wants his friend in the sky to fix it...
Well, this is why I think she should challenge him, because he seems to say, you know, Europe should just open its arms to anyone who wants to come here. I think that is totally ridiculous, unsustainable and unrealistic on many different levels. So surely she should take him to task.
I agree, Emily. Look, I'm with you on this point 100%. I think, just on principle, if the Archbishop of Canterbury asks for a meeting, the Home Secretary should grant him that meeting. They should have a conversation and then move on.
What about if it was the King?
Well, I was just about to
What
say
about
that.
if the King
I
said
was about to say, what about, like, the head of the Jedis? Because that was a religion in the census.
Did you know that Jedis aren't real?
No, because a load of people in the census put that their religion was Jedi and had to become a real religion. So whoever the head of the Jedis is, what if they requested a meeting?
Some Christians might find that offensive, Diane.
No. This is we're talking about religion.
Well, what
Every
I would
religion
say, though,
should
what
have
I would
a go.
say, even Lewis mentioned the King. Even if the King does say, "Look, I want a word with you, Suella, about net zero," for example.
Yeah.
I don't think she should listen to him, right? I don't think she should suddenly decide to change her mind.
But that's not what we're asking. I'm not saying Suella should change her mind. I'm saying she should meet with him and have a conversation. That's all.
Well, let's see what people at home think about that one.
Absolutely. Right, now, still ahead, Oakley is going to get outraged by how a Minister for Men has actually been overlooked this week, and Diane's debacle will calculate whether Rishi Sunak's school maths policies add up. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Now, I've had some mixed reviews when it came to my monologue there on Suella Braverman meeting with Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Kathy says, they say a problem shared is a problem halved. Suella's issues with immigration could do with some divine inspiration. Very good. Very good. Keith says, Justin, Emily, that's the most Reverend and Right Honourable Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, Primate of all England to you. Yes, no, I didn't mean to.
You've been told.
I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I just quite like the name Justin. George says, no point in Suella talking to Welby. He's not interested in anything other than his own opinions, and I can't imagine even his God having much common ground with him. Well, of course, he would dispute that, I'm sure, very strongly. Thank you for your emails. Keep them coming in. They're always a pleasure to read.
Indeed. Now, up next, it's Lewis, and Lewis is going to tell us why we still need a minister for men. The topic of much conversation this week, I think it's safe to be said. Oakley is outraged.
Yes, there has been a lot of distraction this week from a very simple and important question. Do we need a minister for men? Now, I passionately agree, yes, we do. In fact, I think it's quite toxic to look at all of the issues facing men and say that it doesn't matter. And I think that, you know, a lot of the pushback against this comes from thinking of men from a bygone era or the top 1% of men. That's not representative of all men. The statistics are alarming. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50. 75% of suicides are by men. Education, also terrible statistics for how men are coming out of education. Men are also more likely to live at home, and 1 in 3 men say that they have no friends. Issues facing men, such as fatherlessness, or the fact that in our modern society, there really aren't that many positive role models for men that people can really look up to. We then get annoyed when people like Andrew Tate fill that void. And I really think that, you know, we need to have happy and prosperous men in our country. It is good for men, it is good for women, it is good for the society as a whole. And lost in this debate as well, it's good for minority men, gay men, bi men, black men, Asian men. It is what we need. So I think it is high time that we have a minister that champions men's causes and takes this issue seriously. Diane, let's get straight to a woman. What do you think?
Well, I get what you are saying, and I think a lot of it has a lot of merit, but I do take issue with your point, sir, that there are no positive role models.
Who?
Do we not have... Lewis Hamilton, for one.
Lewis Hamilton, Darren.
No.
I did a monologue about Lewis Hamilton not that long ago, saying that he was a hypocrite.
Hypocritical green idiot. I was going to say something else there.
He is a good role model for young black men, and my goodness, we need them.
Yeah, because of him, like, there are way more young black men who are going into racing. And he has fought against discrimination every step of the way. He's also fabulous in his fashion, and he does music on the side. So, OK, but there are lots of male role models that I think that we can look up to. But what it is that the Andrew Tates go for that sort of toxic, predatory element, and sort of the hustlers university, you can take a shortcut to the top, and that's what's appealing to people. And I do dispute the fact that there are no wonderful male... I mean, OK, Tom Daley. Do we like Tom Daley on this panel? Do we like Benedict Cumberbatch? Do we like that bloke who played Bond, blue eyes, what's his name? Daniel
Craig.
Daniel Craig. He's wondrous. Come on, there are
but
loads of brilliant men.
you tell me, and maybe it's the LGBT thing, but I just don't see that there are a lot of men in our society that I'm like, yeah, I want to be like them. And as someone that's raising two boys, I do look at the society, I'm like, you know, you're talking a good game, and obviously a lot on the progressive side, which is important. But at the same time, I don't think you're talking to personal responsibility and those kind of issues that, and also how to talk as well, and talk about your feelings, because they say, oh, men need to talk, men need to talk, but a lot of men don't want to talk. What do you feel?
Well, look, I mean, you know, I'm going to sound like a God botherer right now, actually, but I think there's a God-shaped hole in young men's lives where actually a belief in a divine maker or going to hell actually was a pretty strong deterrent from getting up to no good. These days, we look to people like Andrew Tate to fill the void, and I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's good for society. So what else is going to be put there to actually ensure that young men are not getting involved in a life of either crime or drugs or alcoholism, whatever it might be, benefits even. A life like that is not a life well lived.
A minister for men, that's what's going to be there. What did you think? Do you think there's a God-shaped hole?
I don't know if Minister for Men is what we need, but I do think that we need to be hearing more from politicians, role models, people in various industries, talking about the issues that affect men, and men only, because they do exist. There are issues that only impact men, and I don't like it when women scoff at that, because it is true. We always talk about women's issues. Why not men's issues? And I think, as you said, when it comes to education, it is sad that a lot of boys, more boys than girls, are leaving school without any achievements, qualifications. Not any achievements, but without qualifications. It is terrifying, well, it's appalling that so many men are sadly taking their own lives at such a young age. These are men's issues, and I don't know whether men need to talk more about their feelings. I don't know if men need help when it comes to career advice or what men need, because I'm a woman, right? And I think if men have spaces, and there are some politicians who are talking about this, Ben Bradley's one, but I think men do need specific conversations about their issues, and they shouldn't be ashamed of it.
I do think men need specific conversations about their issues, and I have argued in favour of a Minister for Men before, but only really because we have a Minister for Women and Equalities. And I suppose the question is how much has the Minister for Women and Equalities actually done for women, and how much has it actually been societal change that has changed the situation for feminism and women in Britain? And therefore, how much would a Minister for Men actually do when it's society that needs to change, and that's going to come from people, not politicians.
And Albie does. So I'm so sorry.
No, you go for it.
Well, Albie makes a brilliant point because a minister is not cool. Like nobody wants to be like a minister.
No one's saying that he has to be the one on the back of a motorcycle, like being cool or anything like that.
Being a minister should be cool.
Maybe we could get Daniel Craig to be the Minister for Men. Then it would be cool. He'd have sex appeal. He'd have that godly-like thing that Darren wants, and he would be someone that we all wanted to look up to and follow.
Okay,
Lewis, just very briefly come back to that.
Daniel Craig is
not the Daniel Craig.
I think a Minister for Men will work because it will, someone will be there at the helm of government. It's also about the government showing that they take that issue seriously, and it's not just a joke to the side. A minister will be there, held accountable. We'll have them on when we need to talk to them, and they should be there in the background, inspiring men, really looking at this. I can't believe there's no one in government looking at it.
And the suicide stats that you raised there, Lewis, are really, really quite awful. But on a more cheery note, do not go away, because still to come, it is Diane Spencer who's going to be discussing whether or not Rishi Sunak's plans are adding up. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thanks for your emails too. Lisa's written in on the idea for a minister for men and role models. She says, I'm a single parent to 2 boys who had no positive male role models, but both have grown up to be kind, considerate men with fantastic futures. I don't think role models are always essential. And I imagine you are a fantastic mother. Danny says, I agree with Lewis. I've been saying this for years. Where's the equality if men don't have a minister? Knowing our luck, our minister will be for women. Will be a woman. A woman. Oh, my God. But he says, as long as she's fair, I don't care.
I thought you were going to say fit there. I thought, my God.
No, Danny did not say that. Thank you for not saying that, Danny. Harry says, a pint down the pub with my mates solves all my problems. Perhaps our partners should let us go to the pub more. Perhaps. Depends what state you come back in, I guess. Right, what is next? It's time for our next debate.
Yes, up next it's Diane, and she reckons that actually Rishi Sunak is using the wrong formula to fix our schools. It's time for Diane's debacle.
Yes, Rishi Sunak trying to force all pupils to learn maths until they're 18 is a serious miscalculation. I don't co-sign this, and neither should anyone else. Oh yes, we all go and we learn maths, but only a fraction of people actually understand it, and the rest of us do actually have calculators. I see that Rishi doesn't place much, credit on people who can speak foreign languages or learn how to become certified electricians or chefs or write exciting television programmes. No, he would rather force them to do things that involve going through the migraine-inducing swamp of mathematics. If, Rishi, you're forcing people to learn something until they're 18, at least let's give them something useful. What about how to sort out your pension? How to do a self-employed tax return? How to fill up a car and pay for it without looking like a noob? Yeah? Wouldn't we all love to learn how to do that? Maybe, Rishi, if you had spent more time learning drama, you wouldn't have lost the plot.
Very good.
Diane, those examples you just gave of things, you said sorting out your pension, there's another one filling out a tax return, filling up your car with petrol. Don't you need maths to be able to do all of those things properly?
I don't think you need maths to fill up your car.
Yes, you do, because you have to know how much to put in.
No, I just press the nozzle and wait until it dings.
No, you watch the price go up.
No, you watch
how much
the price,
petrol
Albie.
is going in, and you're counting. The point that I'm making is that maths is fundamental to the way that we live. And in order for us to be a more successful society, I actually think it's important that we are all more maths literate, because I'm shocked at how some people don't even know how to use percentages properly.
But now this is an issue because you are taught percentages at school already. So actually the system is broken. If, as the current statistics suggest, that sort of 65% of people are leaving school without a really good grasp of maths, then what is the point in continuing and teaching them for another 2 years if we're not getting it right for the first 16? Don't we need to focus on the first 16 to get that right before we make them study it for 2 more years?
I think with maths, people tend to reach a glass ceiling, don't they, really, where they can't go any further. Yeah, you get to your peak, and however hard you try, and I actually quite like maths, but however hard you try, you might not be able to get much better at it. So the problem is that you might have people who are, let's be PC about this, incapable of doing much more than simple addition and subtraction, who then are forced to do maths and just can't do it. So what, they get a fail. What's the point?
What is the point in hammering down somebody's confidence for 2 years? I was a secondary school teacher and I taught drama. And do you know what? I taught those kids, and there was one kid, I said to him, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he said, I want to drive diggers. That was the only thing he said. I said, do you want to drive diggers? He went, I just want to drive diggers. Left school at 16. Do you know what he does now? He drives diggers.
Does he? Oh, great.
Dreams come true.
He put a photo on Facebook and he's there next to this massive digger, and I'm like, yes! And why should he be forced to study maths for 2 years?
But I've got to say, when I did see this, I actually felt sorry for Rishi Sunak. Here with me here, I was like, this is just like an outgoing Prime Minister who knows his time's limited, looking for a legacy. It's like, oh, I was the one that made them learn maths late. It's just stupid. And I think I would have more respect for him if he'd have done the more complicated thing and said, you know what, how we teach kids is wrong. We know that some people are visual learners. We know that some people learn by moving. We're going to assess them at a certain age and we're going to put them in classes and teach them like that. Kinesthetic learners. Like,
sort of like, doing a bit of a dance while you're learning your...
Like chucking the ball to each other and...
Yeah, you learn by
that's
doing. You have, like, actions that help you remember.
So, like, 1+3 is 4.
Yeah, exactly. And those people know their fractions.
Is that how you learnt maths?
No, I wasn't a moving learner. What do you call it?
Kinesthetic. There you go. There's a cleverer term. I didn't learn that in school. But I also think, get with the programme. Education is going to change. We're going to have AI that is going to be able to track when you don't really learn things to a degree a teacher never could. And the iPads are going to be teaching our kids in schools before long. Yeah, that's where it's going. We don't need to keep them in school to 18 doing a course that they don't want to do.
It would be good if people could do their maths, though, isn't? It's useful for everything.
Yeah, but that will happen. What I'm saying, AI is going to do that for us.
Pension, taxes,
it'll teach us.
Mortgages, whatever. You need it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself. You say, Louis, we need to get with the programme. Yes, we do need to get with the programme. Let's look at some of the most successful economies in the world, which are more productive than Britain. The East Asian economies of Korea, of Japan, they're all excellent at maths. And what Rishi Sunak is trying to do here is emulate the successes that we've seen in other parts of the world and apply them to Britain. That's what we should be doing.
Do you know what my maths teacher said to me at secondary school? He said, when you fail, Darren, I want you to know that it was all on you. I got a D. I did fail. He was right. So there we are.
You got a D?
I got a D.
A shame.
I did it again and I got a C, but there we are. Now, that's all for the first hour, but don't go away because we'll be unpicking more of the week's spiciest debates. Now, first of all, it's your weather.
Hello, I'm Marco Britannia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. Over the next few days, we'll see mixed weather conditions across the UK, outbreaks of rain at times in most areas, but equally some warm sunshine too. At the moment, we've got low pressure moving in from the southwest. These weather fronts bringing in outbreaks of rain to many areas, fairly tightly packed isobars too, again, particularly towards the northwest. So we'll see some windy conditions, and that's certainly the case as we head into the overnight period. Outbreaks of rain moving in from the southwest across many areas, tending to become more confined towards the northeast of Scotland as we head into the early hours of Sunday, and also a fairly slow-moving band affecting the central slice of the UK here across Wales into parts of northern England. Pretty warm towards the southeast at 16 or 17 degrees, a little bit fresher towards the north and northwest. As we head into Sunday, then this band of rain will continue to affect parts of Wales, northern England, the North Midlands throughout the day, tending to weaken after, giving some heavy bursts of rain through the morning here. Whereas towards the southeast of the UK, it's a brighter picture, generally fine here throughout the day, and brighter towards the north and northwest with just 1 or 2 showers around at times. In the sunshine towards the southeast becoming very warm, 23 or 24 degrees, the mid-70s in Fahrenheit, and even towards the north not bad at 18 Celsius. As for Monday, well, that band of rain will pep up once again across that central slice of the UK, so parts of Wales, the Midlands, northern England, even the southwest of England could see some rain at times on Monday. Brighter with a few showers towards the southeast, and generally turning a bit brighter with scattering of showers as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the second hour of the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Albion and Corner, Emily Carver, Lewis Oakley and Diane Spencer.
Yes, tonight on the show we're going to be discussing whether private schools should pay VAT on fees, whether we should expose bad drivers, and the Rishi Sunak has had a bit of a bashing of the BBC. We'll get into that.
Indeed, all that and more. It's 8 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5, the extended version. Tonight, we're giving you not 1, but 2 hours of feisty debate and opinion.
Yes, we'll be taking a look at some of the stories you might have missed this week, unpicking them with the experts before our panel react. Keep the emails coming through. You know the email, gbviews@gbnews.com. But before we jump in head first, it is your Saturday Night News with Aaron.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Let's get you up to date with the headlines from the GB newsroom. The family of the school coach driver who died in a crash on the Wirral yesterday have described him as a loving husband and father. They say Stephen Shrimpton suffered medical issues at the wheel of the coach. The 40-year-old was a father to 2 children. 15-year-old Jessica Baker also died in the crash. 4 other children were taken to hospital, including a 14-year-old boy whose injuries are said to be life-changing. The Chancellor suggested cuts to the welfare budget could end what he's described as a vicious circle of ever-rising taxes. Jeremy Hunt told The Times the welfare system needs reform because 100,000 people a year move off benefits without being obliged to look for work, which he says proves it's not working. He's under pressure after dozens of Tory backbenchers vowed not to vote for his autumn statement if it contains tax rises. It includes the former Prime Minister Liz Truss and the former party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. A former party chairman, Sir Jake Berry, who organised the pledge, says it will hold the Chancellor to his word.
All too often, we have seen these promises and pledges made by MPs across the political divide that haven't materialised. That is why this tax pledge is different. It isn't connected to the Conservative Party. It is a direct pledge from me to my constituents in Rosendale and Darwen and to the British people that I will not vote to put taxes up. It's for keeps. It is a pledge that I will stick to as long as I am a Member of Parliament.
Well, the Chancellor's comments come ahead of the Tory party conference, which starts tomorrow. Rishi Sunak has arrived in Manchester and he is expected to address the war on motorists this week. He told The Sun harebrained schemes like low traffic neighbourhoods and 20 miles per hour zones are being forced on drivers. The Department for Transport says the guidance will be reviewed to prevent their blanket use in England. The ASLEF union has denied today's train strikes were politically motivated after the government said it was planned to coincide with their party conference. Train drivers at 16 operators in England walked out in their long-running dispute, and many parts of the country had no services at all, and those that did run finished earlier than usual. Hundreds of demonstrators staged a protest earlier against the Rosebank offshore development. They were in central London, demanding the government reconsider approval for the controversial oil field. It's located 80 miles west of Shetland and is the UK's largest untapped field. It's estimated to contain up to 300 million barrels of oil. This is GB News. We're on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker as well. But now it's back to the Saturday 5.
Thanks, Aaron. It's Saturday night. You are with the Saturday 5. I am Emily Carver.
And I'm Darren Grimes. Now then, we've heard all about Sir Keir Starmer's latest flip-flopping antics. After he said Labour would remove the charitable status for private schools, he's now saying that actually he won't be doing that, but what he will do is slap 20% VAT on the fees. That's only if he wins the next general election, of course. There are about 2,500 private schools in England and Wales. But if those were to collapse, what would that mean for the state schooling system? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Lisa Mackenzie. Lisa, cheers very much for your company. Can you just briefly set out what Labour are actually proposing here?
Yeah, for quite a number of years now at the Labour Party conferences, there's been big debates over private schools. Obviously, people have strong opinions about them. I have strong opinions about them. So 2 years ago at the party conference, it was suggested that the charity status would be removed. So that means that private schools would not be charities because they aren't charities. They're actually schools and businesses. And so what he's done is rode back on part of that argument, but he's actually kept the pledge where he's going to add 20% VAT. And this is actually something that the IFS in July wrote a report about and actually thought that this was a good idea. So the IFS has sort of really agreeing with this idea that it won't hurt private schools to such an extent. It won't cause chaos in the public sector, and actually it will raise money for other schools.
OK, I mean, Lisa, what are the Labour Party members saying then? Because they obviously voted for it to be potentially a little bit more robust than it ultimately is going to. And I mean, you're a straight-talking lass yourself. I've seen you on telly plenty of times. Are you personally not a little bit sick of Sir Keir Starmer taking more positions than perhaps the Kama Sutra?
Listen, I've been sick of Keir Starmer for at least 12 years, actually, since when he was sort of prosecuting people in the 2011 riots. I've been sick of him for a long time. I am not a Labour Party member or supporter. I'm an anarchist and hate them all equally, actually. But what I am is I'm a working class woman who is now a lecturer at a university. I've got the position of doctor. And I know that the ways that education can be manipulated and used to game the system to make sure that people with more money do better and get much better opportunities.
So, I mean, Lisa, there you say you're an anarchist, and what you're actually advocating here might well bring about anarchy, will it not? Because there are going to be fewer parents able to afford to actually send their kids to these schools. Not all of them are wealthier than Midas. You know, there's this idea that we're all walking around as Jacob Rees-Mogg. Actually, a lot of parents might perhaps be working day and night to send their kids to a private school. And this would mean, would it not, that the taxpayer has to then take on the cost. That's some 40,000 children forced into the state school sector, and that is estimated to cost around 600 million quid a year for government. This would just lead to total chaos, wouldn't it?
No, because that's not what's going to happen. That's sort of the scenario that there is no private schools. What we're talking about here is this 20% rise in VAT. Now, we need to argue, why shouldn't private schools have this VAT added? You know, if they're a business, which they are, then all businesses have to pay VAT. Ask the hairdressers, ask the people who are providing other services on our high streets today how difficult the VAT bills are, and then say, well, some services don't need to pay that. It's unfair. And also, if it's an investment, a lot of families would say it's an investment in our future. Well, investments are always, you have to have VAT on that. For financial arguments, it's a sound argument, but there's a bigger argument which is about equality and the way that Britain feels very unfair at the moment. And parents send their children to private schools for one of two reasons, and this is my straight talking bit. One reason is so they can game the system and they can get unfair advantages for their children. And the other one is to keep their children away from working class children.
Oh, no. Come on, Lisa. You don't seriously believe that, right? That's just class warfare.
Yes. Well, that's where we are. I do believe that. I do believe that middle-class parents, especially in parts of London, do not want their children past the age of 11 mixing with working-class kids. So they're quite happy to do them in the primary schools. The minute they get to 11, they're going to private schools. And that is a definite. That is about class prejudices.
OK, Lisa, I'm sure our panel are going to disagree with that strongly, some of them at least. But, Lisa, thank you very much for your time. Brilliant stuff. I mean, that's one perspective, is it not, Emily?
Yeah, I think she has a point. I'm sure there are some parents who don't want their children to be around what they might call the riffraff. They might do. I'm sure there are parents like that. But for me, it's just, why are the Labour Party focusing on this? And I can't help but think that this is about trying to have some kind of class warfare going on. And it smacks of politics of envy, because practically there are a lot of parents who won't be able to send their kids to private school with this additional cost, and that will fall on the state sector. And also, one more thing.
Yeah.
It is impossible for left-wing people to completely level the playing field.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you get rid of private schools, those parents who are motivated to and have the money to will get them private tutors.
Absolutely.
And also, I'm sorry, but some parents are better at educating their children than others, so they'll still have that advantage. So you cannot take away all advantage.
Look, I don't think we should scrap VAT from private schools, but I did think Lisa had a strong argument, which was it is another service. A hairdresser pays VAT. Why shouldn't a private school pay VAT? I think that was her strongest argument, actually, because as someone who believes that there should be tax simplification and that taxes should apply pretty cohesively to all different kinds of businesses, even though I'm questioning myself, why do I think that private schools should be VAT exempt, but other services should have to pay VAT?
The rebuttal to that is that it's education. So it's more important, it's a fundamental, public service.
But private healthcare companies pay VAT.
Well, I'd actually just get rid of the VAT that private healthcare companies are paying, to be honest.
Or you should even get tax relief if you don't send your kids through
you're doing
the
a public
system.
good. You're doing a public good. Lewis, you've got kids. Would you think twice about actually sending your kids? Were you in a position to do so? I have no idea if you are. Send your kids to a private school. Would you be worried that actually Lisa's right and you're just doing it to keep them away from riffraff?
No, I have no plans to send them to private school, actually. But I do think that...
Why? Are you morally opposed to private school?
I didn't go to private school, and...
Why should they?
I think I've done OK. I've done great.
This is a disaster.
But, no, so I didn't go to private school. I don't have any plans to send my kids, because I want them to mix with different people of all backgrounds, and I guess you could maybe get that in private school. And I do think there's advantages. I don't even think it's about the education, the smaller class numbers. I think that basically, if you can afford to send your kids to private school, you're probably all going to know people that are going to be successful and be able to get a job that way. That's what I kind of think is the benefit of it,
the
right?
networking.
Diane, as a former secondary school teacher yourself, where do you stand on this? Because it would be a massive additional burden on the education system, would it not, if all private schools just ceased to exist?
Well, I mean, that's definitely not what Labour are suggesting. But I went to a private school, and my parents are both working class. So Lisa's saying that it's because, oh, they don't want their kids associating and they want them to mix with people. It's a load of rubbish.
Yeah.
That she's talking from a position of absolute zero experience.
Diane,
of
I do know
experience.
people who went to my private school whose parents definitely sent them there because they didn't want them to go to the local state school. I know that for sure.
Cataclysmically different from what she's painting the image to be. And there are so many private schools which you see them every day, and then it's not all just Eton. It's not all just prime ministers. There are just some schools. But yes, I agree, they should run like a business. But my parents were working class and they wanted me to have the best education they could possibly get. So they sent me to
Also,
a
it's
private
just
school.
silly because even if you got rid of private schools, people would move to catchment areas where it was middle-class comprehensives anyway, which you have currently. People, you know, you have schools that are predominantly middle-class comprehensives, and then you have others that are predominantly working class. You know, it still can happen.
I will
And
say,
you
I
still
think
have
that I actually this is quite cruel. Like, imagine if you are a child in one of these schools that's like, my parents won't be able. If this happens, my parents won't be able to afford to send me here anymore. They'll be shamed that we're poor, but also I'm going to be away from all my friends. It's actually quite cruel if you think about it to change the game.
And also, though, right, when all these kids leave private schools, they go to university, some of them, right? They're mixing with the riffraff then, aren't they? So it doesn't actually keep them away.
Riffraff, your words. Oh, actually,
well,
I think I used
I
them.
class myself as the riffraff.
But that was Lisa. It was funny that Lisa was talking about anarchy, because surely you wouldn't even have a public state system of schooling if you lived in a real anarchy. So I guess there's that.
This VAT on universities?
Well, I mean, there's another issue there because already the students are having to pay like these whopping fees. But again, you are offering a service, and none of it is compulsory. Like, if you don't have to, but it does reduce people's choice because then people better apply for bursaries and scholarships because otherwise they're not going to be able to afford it. I actually got a scholarship to attend my private school in the sixth form. You know,
even with your hatred of maths.
Even with my... Well, I mean, if
You didn't
Rishi
do maths,
Sunak
did
was in
you?
charge... Can I tell you, I tried.
Maths
I tried.
A-level? She tried.
I tried, but the maths teacher literally told me, got your experience, darling, let the maths boat sail on without you.
Just on your point about bursaries, I think my concern about bringing in VAT on private schools is that the first things that they would cut would be those pots of money which are set aside for scholarships and bursaries. And the only reason I was able to go to a private school is one of the reasons was because one of my mum's clients paid for some of the fees.
Yeah.
And the other reason was because I was on a scholarship and bursary, because there's no way that my mum would have been able to afford to send me to a private school. So my concern is that actually by this attack on private schools, it's actually going to close down opportunities for people from underprivileged backgrounds to have that experience that you had.
Well, I think that Emily made an excellent point in that I think that it's something that Labour, that Sir Keir Starmer is trying to define himself by, and it's because we can't really tell what he thinks about anything else.
Well, yes, that's quite
And
right.
he's, you know, washed it down.
Do you know what, though? I would bring back grammar schools. I absolutely would do that. I think that from Harold Wilson up until John Major, we had prime ministers that went to grammar schools.
Yeah.
Why is that? Ask
Theresa
yourself
May.
that fundamental question, and Theresa May, but we'll ignore that one. Anyway, still to come tonight, what is charge rage? Have you heard of this charge rage? And why are motorway service stations having to bring in the heavies to stop EV owners fighting? You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Cheers for your company and cheers for your emails as well. Adam's written in, first of all, I'm going to read this one out, Emily. His 5 is in the post because he said that actually he's loving the fact that his favourite GB News show is 2 hours tonight. What more can I possibly say?
Aww.
I could have written that myself.
Did you?
I didn't, I promise. I didn't actually write it myself. On the maths discussion that we had earlier, that was Diane's segment, Peter's written in, he says, the comments from some of your guests shows what's wrong with them. Oh, he's not holding back. Peter's not holding back. He says, our people need to know maths, even if it's only at the level of personal budgeting. That's what Albie was saying. Yeah. Ronald's written in, he says, I've not needed algebra, quadratic equations, calculus or transposition. I don't even know what transposition is, to be honest. Is that some new LGBT?
Well, you wouldn't with your G, so
I have no idea. Since I left school at 16, over 52 years ago, Ronald, you raise a good point. And look, we've all got iPhones.
And how are your accounts, Ronald?
Well, yeah,
I'm joking.
And on the private schools debate that we just had a moment ago, Elizabeth says education is a charitable endeavour and always has been, just as music, museums, art galleries, etc. They're all charitable endeavours. There's no way they can be classed as businesses. Where are the shareholders, she says? Why aren't schools listed on the stock exchange? VAT is the EU tax that should have gone anyway, so that's I'll be told. And David said if private schools must pay VAT, then sure must universities. And that was the point. We did discuss that, didn't we, Diane? Now, moving on, it's time for our next debate.
Yes, on to our next story. This week, you may have missed this one, a small village in Derbyshire hit the headlines after a fight broke out over poor parking. Residents in Spondon have been accusing one another of blocking driveways with their cars, and it seems to have escalated. Some villagers have resorted to leaving passive-aggressive notes on windscreens and writing barbed comments on Facebook groups about one another's driving. So with worries that emergency services couldn't make it through some streets due to parking misdemeanours, I'm asking, we're asking, is it OK to publicly call out those who aren't skilled behind the wheel? So let's get the view of the founder of Stop Killing Cyclists, Donica McCarthy. Donica, thank you very much for joining us this evening on the Saturday 5. I think this is your first time on this particular show. Now, I've heard that you've got a theory as to why things are kicking off a bit more between drivers, because this is a scene, what I just described, is something that quite a lot of us have got used to, I think.
Yeah, reading the story was quite, I have to say, a bit hilarious. It was like a whole load of neighbours screaming at each other about, "You've parked your car in front of my house again, how dare you!" Luckily, I don't ever have to have those arguments because I've got an e-bike rather than a car. But I think that the serious point here really is, it looks like a whole bunch of people dealing with a national problem, which is the explosion of car ownership in the UK. People feel they've been forced to buy cars. We've gone from something like 20 million cars to 32 million cars over the last 30 years. We're a small island, 32 million cars. I just did the maths before I came on the programme, Emily, and it came out, I think, 3.2 billion square feet of parking we need just to have the cars. That's the equivalent of 100 City of Londons. And so therefore, 10 into 1 doesn't go.
Donica, if we didn't have, if we had fewer cars, would we not just resort to fighting over our bicycles instead, or fighting over our e-scooters, or the pavement, barging each other? We just, need any excuse to start sending passive-aggressive notes to our neighbours, it seems, in this country.
There's some amazing videos on YouTube of rush hour in Amsterdam with thousands and hundreds of thousands of cyclists heading to work. And it's amazing to watch how they intermingle and don't end up kicking each other or having rows. It's extraordinary. But actually, the serious point is the government seems to be going in the opposite direction of encouraging people to own cars and not use public transport and cycling and walking. That's a problem for the economy, but also for people like in this village. Where are we going to put the cars? What's happened over the last 13 years, Emily, is that they have cut the cost of car ownership every year. Fuel duty's been cut every year for the last 10 years. Cars are more efficient.
Frozen,
so they're
I
cheaper.
think. Frozen, not cut.
It equates to a real cut. If you don't increase the price of your house, Emily, every year, I don't think you will be very happy about it with inflation. So they think us. But actually, if you look at public transport, they've increased it above inflation over the last 10 years, and 50% of the bus routes are gone. So we're forcing people onto cars and fighting over this scrap of space.
Yeah, I think you make
road.
a decent point there, Donica. Just lastly, while I've got you, I think I can predict what you might say. But you're not too impressed with Rishi Sunak's pro-motorist announcements that he's going to launch.
Oh, to be frank with you, I've been listening to this ridiculous meme of the war on motorists for the last 10 years, watching them having billions of pounds of subsidies poured towards them, 27 billions of road building, and almost nothing spent on cycle lanes and on public transport. The real war is on our kids' safety and on public transport users, and there's not a war on motorists. It's the opposite. It's the truth.
Well, there you go. There is no war on motorists, says Donica McCarthy. Thank you very much indeed for your time. He is the founder of Stop Killing Cyclists. Well, I must say to Donica, I would have said if we'd continued talking all evening, I would have said that, you could reasonably say that ULEZ, Darren, and the number of LTNs there are, and also the number of cycle lanes that are making, the driving space smaller. That could be called a war on motorists, could it not?
Absolutely. I tell you what, right, if you were to say to all those spandex-clad people that
what have you got against spandex?
We're going to say £12.50 a day to enter London, how quick would Donegal and his mates be out on the streets saying that there's a war against cyclists? It's exactly the same for motorists, and there is a clear agenda against people in cars. We need cars. If you've got a family, you need your car, even if it's a Nissan Micra, you need your car.
I agree, because I can't drive. I'm learning now, and I'm learning because I've got 3 kids, and I cannot get them around. Otherwise, it's just too tricky with all of the trains, so I have to learn to drive. But I've got to say, this village puts fear into me. I don't want all of this trouble you parked here, you parked wonky. I'm just trying.
I've got to be honest. I was most interested in his point when he said, over the last 13 years, or whatever the time period was, there were 20 million cars just 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and now there was something like 32 million cars. So that's an extra 12 million cars in not a very large space of time. And I just wonder, within our lifetimes, do you really think that since we were kids, parents need cars more than they did in the past, and therefore that explains why there are so many more cars?
Well, there are quite a few million more people just in the last decade, so that may play into the equation here. But
not everything's down to migration, Emily. It's a serious point I'm making. Why do we need to drive more now than we did in the past?
Because of mobility, because of social mobility, because of being able to work in different places, because of being able to apply to, you know, maybe you live in Swindon but you want to work in Oxford. And I spend so long on the road because my job as a comedian, I have to drive all over the country. Like, I've driven up to do gigs in Edinburgh and Darlington.
God, you're so lazy, Diane. Why don't you just get on your
cycle.
cycle there. Have a nice walk. Google Maps it.
Cycle on my e-bike. Oh my God.
What about, Diane, I'm interested to get your view on this, you know, what goes on between neighbours. Because this happened when I used to live with my parents. This happened quite a lot. People parking in front of other people's drives. Sometimes people leaving notes. There was a WhatsApp group that sometimes lit up when, let's say, people weren't behaving as they should with their vehicles. Is this something that is a British thing?
It's definitely a very British thing, but I mean, that's only because I haven't experienced it in other countries. I'm sure it happens in other countries, but the use of a Facebook group, the fact that now it's not just a passive-aggressive note on a windscreen, because that would be like a one-to-one sort of thing, but now you could put it on a public forum. I noticed that Mrs. Weatherby has forgotten where the line is.
At number 11?
Yeah, exactly, and you can publicly out people. But I don't know, it does come down to sort of the sense of some people are saying, yes, but you can't drive. And there were diagrams, weren't there, in this story of this village, Spondon? Like, people drawing diagrams. This is how much room you need to park your car. For somebody like you, Lewis, who's learning how to drive the car, it's terrifying, isn't it?
It's absolutely terrifying. And I can't park very well as it is, so I'm just terrified that this is going to be my future and the neighbours are going to start hating me. But how awkward, though. I can't imagine, like, leaving notes for my neighbour. If I have a problem with my neighbour, I would go knock on their door and say, look, I'm really sorry, but X, Y, Z. This whole leaving notes and WhatsApping and public shaming, it's like Twitter cancelling or something. Like, just deal with it privately and sort it.
We know, but you're saying deal with it face-to-face, which I think is brilliant. Yeah, like, go up to somebody, because, and just sort of say to them, I'm terribly sorry. It does happen to be 4 o'clock in the morning. You seem to have parked on my drive and you're having a rave. I don't suppose you could turn the music down. You know, and saying it face-to-face is quite good, because at least then you can establish a rapport.
Albie, some more context to this story is, it seems to me what happened was there was a man or a woman who kept encroaching ever so slightly on her driveway, so she couldn't easily park her car. He then starts calling her a bad driver and needs to get more lessons or something like this as a result. You can see how these things escalate, don't they?
I just don't understand this road rage. You see, I'm quite a calm, cool and collected person. And whenever people... Well, I like to think I am, at least anyway. Maybe you've got different views, Darren especially. But I never understand why people get so angry. I sometimes think, isn't anger a bit of a pointless emotion that we used to use when we were animals, when we'd had to kill each other? But now in the modern world... In the modern world, we don't need to do that.
So how would you deal with it?
I would have a reasonable, fact-based, evidence-led discussion.
Oh my, you would be so annoying then.
You'd be I have tape measure going on the turning circle
I would.
of this.
Do you drive?
Absolutely right. No, I can't drive, but I am a cyclist. So I'm more on Donica's side of things, I would probably...
No, but if you've never driven a car, you don't know what it's like to have that pure anger that, you know, if there had been 2 seconds difference, you would have just hit my car. So maybe you should drive, and then we'll see the anger.
Sure,
you find the anger.
Drive. I've always had a learn to drive when I have children,
and
like you are.
And you can still be impacted by being a passenger, surely, as well.
Of course, and also impacted by being a cyclist. You can be very badly impacted if you're hit by a car
I know
on a bike.
Motorists watching today
that'd be an awful impact.
Impacted by cyclists once or twice. They are the most irritating people in this country. I have absolutely no doubt about that. Anyway,
every single one of them. We need to get Donica back for some balance.
If any viewers are cyclists, I changed my mind. Now, still ahead. Is Rishi Sunak right to bash the Beeb for talking down Britain? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you, too, for your emails. Steve's written in. He says, Emily, is there no protest group that Donica doesn't belong to? That made me laugh. It made me chuckle because he's a sweetie pie, actually. I enjoy it. That's why that's a bit patronising, isn't it? I enjoy his contribution because he's so earnest in his belief that we all need to get out of our cars. Sandra says, war on cyclists. As a visitor to The Hague, I was struggling to cross the main road. Having made it safely across, I was horrified to find myself stuck in the road with an army of cyclists travelling at breakneck speed along the cycle lane, which was between me and the pavement. It was terrifying. I know what you mean. That has happened to me before, where I've, you're sort of stuck in it's particularly around Westminster. Stan says, these climate geeks don't seem to realise that outside of the metropolitan cities, people need their cars as public transport does not exist. Then there's tradesmen with lorries, vans, etc. Gary says, on the whole WhatsApp culture, Gary says, our village always has rows about parking. It's not unusual. We love the drama on the Facebook group. everyone loves local drama, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's usually Facebook, isn't it, really? People posting passive-aggressive things.
What was the
I noticed that number 11 is doing X,
What was the name of that woman who was really big during the pandemic from the parish council and it all just went...
Oh, yeah, the authority.
Jackie Weaver, and everyone loved that. It was like everyone was getting involved in their neighbour's business and it was this big national thing. So I can see it. I'm glad that villageman is being honest.
I think we need to bring that back next week because that video clip was just epic.
Well, can
I tell you, there is actually a gig in Cirencester that I went to recently, and the MC is local there. And the first thing he does at the beginning is he prints off the local Facebook page and he says, right, who knows this person? He reads out their names and then he reads out status updates from the local Facebook page. It's hysterical because there are people going, I know them. It's great.
Wow. And just one last one. Where are we? Oh, yes. Oh, no. Oh, I've lost where my place. Alex says, this has nothing to do with owning a car. It's people today who feel self-entitled and, quite honestly, just because you ride a bike doesn't make you a superior person.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
That is a strong opinion there.
It's true. Not everyone can ride a bike.
Look, it's lycra-fascism. Lycra-fascism, if you ask me. Now, on to our next story. Rishi Sunak has accused the BBC of burying positive news about the British economy and instead parroting Labour lines about the state of the country's finances. The UK economy actually grew much faster than previously expected since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns, outstripping the growth of both the French and German economies in turn. The Prime Minister said that the news that GDP had grown by that 1.8%, contrary to the prediction that it would contract by 0.2%, surprisingly, and I think he was being sarcastic there, hadn't made its way to the top of the BBC News homepage. Well, joining us now to discuss this is the former Brexit Party MEP and, frankly, someone who has a lot to say about anti-Beeb, Rupert Lowe. Rupert, thank you very much for your time. You mustn't agree with him on very much at the minute, Rupert, but I assume on this point, you and Rishi Sunak are as one.
Indeed, I think it's interesting that he's brought this to the fore now. I mean, the BBC, as you quite rightly say, I've been calling for a long time now for the BBC for the licence fee to be removed, and for the criminality. You get a criminal record if you don't pay your licence fee, which I think is the only debt. You get a criminal record for not paying. So not only have we got a state monopoly, we've got enforcement through our legal system if you don't pay the fee. So it's a pretty watertight monopoly. It was set up in an era past by Reith. He wanted to inform, educate and entertain with complete impartiality. And I think anybody would agree that the BBC now does neither entertain, educate nor inform, and it certainly isn't impartial. So, I mean, recently we've had Nick Robinson claiming that the reason that the BBC Radio 4 listeners have dropped by a million over the last 2 years, that people have got news fatigue, bad news fatigue. Well, in actual fact, it's because people are turning off and they're beginning to listen to other forms of news on different channels, particularly young people.
Indeed, like this one, dare I say. But Rupert, what would you say, though, to perhaps the BBC, were it here to respond, would say, look, I do not make the news for Rupert Lowe and Rishi Sunak. They might be swivel-eyed Brexiteers, but I ain't. And we're giving people the news hard and fast and accurate and unbiased. What would you say to that? Good news can be hard to find, right? We're going through hard times.
Well, Darren, I'm actually keen on debate with people who disagree with me. I like that. You know, I think that's how you get at the truth, and that's what we don't have enough of. And I actually think the BBC has got so used to being part of the dismemberment of what the Victorians left that they've actually lost sight of what Reith set them up to do. Obviously, he came from a much more paternalistic era, and we didn't have lots of, digital channels on which you can get accurate news now. If you can get it from wherever you want it, you can get it in real time. So I think Rishi Sunak, he intervened, if you recall, recently on the NatWest situation, where we had some wokery, which was effectively being perpetrated on quite a lot of people with whom they disagreed, which is not a bank's job. So it's good to see him intervening, but I actually think the point here is not the fact that the British economy has done better. It's not to do better than the German economy. The German economy is struggling with effectively the removal of the internal combustion engine. They've got all the legacy issues of that.
Yeah.
And I think Germany's in for a rough time. France, I've always said, they haven't got much of an economy.
I mean, that's an interesting point, because I saw a lot of commentary online, I know you'll agree with me on this, Rupert, where they were saying that, well, actually, it's because Britain's not doing very well because we're so no longer attached to this EU single market. And I said, tell that to France and Germany, for goodness sake. But anyway, Rupert, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your thoughts on the Beeb there, Rupert Lowe. Now, Albie, again, you're my BBC sympathiser on the panel.
Proudly.
I mean, do you think, actually, does Rupert have a point, basically? And Rishi Sunak, your favourite.
I think there is certainly something to be said for the BBC not necessarily always parroting's the wrong word, but not really showing, not really being impartial all of the time, and not necessarily saying, well, look, the forecasts last year were totally wrong, why were they so wrong, and actually having that conversation. Instead, it's just, well, when they get the forecast, it's like, well, we're going to shrink by 0.2% next year, and then we actually get the results and it's 1.8% growth, and then they don't ask why were they wrong in the first place. So I just think, and maybe this is something all media can do better at, is actually asking, well, why were we wrong last time, and trying to figure out how we can be right next time.
Emily, this reticence that Rishi Sunak speaks of, do you think were there to be a Labour government that the BBC would be so reticent to publish good news when it's going well for the Labour Party? Do you think there's some bias at play here?
That's very hard to say, but I'm sure if you did poll BBC employees, and we do see when they go off to do other media jobs where they're able to be free in what they say, that you do often find that they tend to be of the Remain sort of liberal left persuasion. I'm not saying that directly has an impact on their the coverage, although it may.
Andrew Neil was from the BBC.
I do think he was, he is. So there's always different people who have different political views. But I do think that I've always said this, actually, in my many years. I've always said that it's not necessarily just having the balance of guests right on a show, I think, or on the website or wherever. I think that it is the choice of stories that the BBC does. Which stories they choose to promote, which stories they choose to amplify, and which stories they choose to ignore. And I think that is where we can criticise the BBC quite strongly.
Diane, turning to you in your Nissan Micra, do you want to throw something at the radio when you've got Radio 4 Today programme on, maybe? Because actually, it's funereal, if you ask me, in its tone and approach.
Yes, quite often. I'm aware that in trying to apply to have things made on the BBC throughout my years, one of the things I was told for Radio 4 was, remember, our viewers aren't listening. I was literally told the viewers aren't really paying attention. They're doing something else. So you'll be on in the background. Now, to be told that as somebody who's trying to create the most incredible radio drama you've ever written in your life is deeply disheartening.
Isn't that just the truth about radio, though? Because I always have the radio on and I'm always doing something else. Isn't that just what radio is?
I mean, it could be. I mean, but when they...
Yeah, but your ears prick up when
they had War of the Worlds, I sit and listen to audiobooks. I absolutely love them. But, sorry, back to your impartiality. Yes, I do get very angry when, like, now that the Strictly programme is on, that's going to be in the news. And that infuriates me because it's not news. And it was exactly what Emily said about the selection that they choose to put up there. And I learned a long time ago that you can read the BBC News website to see sort of, well, these are the top stories according to the BBC, but you must then go elsewhere. You must.
Strictly is the biggest television show in the country.
Yeah,
so
well,
that it is
not
news,
anymore, because the Saturday Five's on the other box, the other side even. Lewis, just very briefly, if you would, because we're running out of time, do you agree with Rishi Sunak? Has he got a point, or has he been OTT?
No, I think he needs to grow up.
Ooh.
He needs to grow up. The country is not in a good state right now. We have record inflation, we have got people that cannot afford their bills, we have got no housing, we've got infrastructure falling apart left, right and centre, and he's there like, but what about this little bit over here where I did some good work? Grow up, shut up. Like, I just don't see what he's moaning about. And I don't think it's...
You make a good point, to be fair. But I think it's more about correcting the record.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to leave it there, folks, but I'm sure the emails will be coming in thick and fast. Still ahead, though, charging chaos and emotional support alligators. Classic Saturday news. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thanks for your emails too. On the cyclists, Pat says, I don't understand, and cars actually. Pat says, I don't understand why garages are filled with junk and the car is left out on the road. Many car owners park very selfishly on roads and pavements. I believe in Japan, you can't own a car unless you have off-road parking. Well, that's very interesting. We have to fact-check that one, but I'm sure you're right. Peter says, for the cyclist clowns, pay road tax. Would you pay road tax, Alvy?
No, because what we are doing is we are keeping healthy
morally superior
and removing money straight on the NHS.
The roads. Maureen's, Graham says, Rishi is right to highlight the facts, and Joan says, we should have so much pride in our country, the news about the economy should be on every single front page. There you go. Right, well, it's time for our next debate.
Indeed. Britain's biggest motorway service station provider has reported some shocking news this week. Get this. They're now having to employ marshals to prevent electric car users battling it out over charging points. It'll be like vegans fighting over that last Greggs vegan sausage roll. The chief executive of Moto has said that what he called charge rage has been playing out across the country as drivers are forced to confront one another in a bid to charge up their vehicles. Now, the clear lack of electric charging points has resulted in long queues and public disorder, with staff now being hired to try and keep the peace. I mean, this is extraordinary, isn't it? Has anyone got an electric car?
No. But
God, we're all
Most of you
petrol
can't even. Well, yeah, most of you can't even drive. Do you know what? I wonder if this has actually descended into fisticuffs, because if you need to get somewhere and it already takes like half an hour to charge or more, I'm not sure, and then there's someone in there, and you must really be absolutely desperate to get one of the charging,
because your car's your freedom.
Loads of them are sometimes broken as well.
Yes.
So I've heard.
And they have the wrong adapters. So regularly, when I stop in the services up the motorway, you'll sort of pull into Reading services, for example, and they have this huge bank of chargers, and it will be completely full, and there will be a queue. But it depends on where they're going, like, because they could have to sit there for 2 to 3 hours to charge a car. And if you're somebody like me who needs to drive sort of 200, 150 miles in every single direction, having to sit and plan in an extra 2 hours into your journey.
Doesn't that just mean we need to be better at building the infrastructure needed to support an economy where more of us have electric cars? We've not been good enough at doing that. We need more fast chargers. We need electric car chargers at supermarkets. We need them at leisure centres. We need them at petrol stations. We need to build
We also need the
infrastructure
A brilliant
for net
point,
zero.
Albie, a brilliant point. Let's take out the cycle lanes and put electric car chargers
that's not what we need to do. Not at all, Dan.
No, it's quick work.
I'm so much more relaxed about this now. I think this is just, ever since they pushed back the petrol car ban, I'm like, well, it's fine. I think it's just teething issues, and eventually they'll figure out a system, people will calm down, people will know where they are in the queue, and it'll be fine.
You know what? I think we're all just a bit grumpy these days. Everyone's out for their own, aren't they? Now, on to our final story this evening. An intriguing tale from across the pond, this one. An emotional support alligator, yes, you heard that correctly, was denied entry into a baseball stadium on Wednesday. Now, Wally, there he is, otherwise known as Wally Gator, very good, was not allowed into Citizens Bank Park with owner Joy Henney for the match, which saw the Philadelphia Phillies take on Pittsburgh. Mr. Henney claims that the alligator is a support animal after it helped him through depression.
Aww.
Oh, Wally has thousands of fans on social media where he's famous for hugs and kisses. So, Darren, do you think this man should have been allowed to take his support alligator into this stadium?
I mean, Emily, I've kissed some things in my time. Never anything that scary, I tell you that much for free. So, no, I don't think I would feel all that comfortable with Wally being in a park.
That's health and safety gone mad, isn't it, Lewis?
You cannot have an alligator just wandering around, no matter what your excuses for. I'm really sorry. No, but is its mouth shut? What if there's kids around? No. As a parent, no.
Muzzled?
Yeah, come on, he's got a little T-shirt on, a little...
I don't want him nibbling at my kids' legs as someone's streaming it for support. No.
Legs? Do they need both legs?
I don't want your kids nibbling on my legs, but, you know...
They're well trained.
Things like that.
Normally, you are a sensible voice of reason, but tonight you're saying that this man should be allowed to take an alligator into a sports stadium. Are you mad?
Is that even good for the alligator?
He's got more TikTok followers than all of us combined, you know. He's a national treasure.
So maybe it's just a ploy to get in the media and we've just fallen into his hands.
Well, yes. Well, it's worked, hasn't it? I mean, the fact it's being, promoted in this country, reported in this country, I think that's all we've got time for.
And in this country, the XL bully might be after the poor Wally, so there you are. Anyway, thank you very much to our guests tonight, who've been absolutely fabulous. Next up, it's the brilliant Mark Dolan, who I'm sure will be one to watch. Cheers very much for watching, and again, cheers very much to Lewis and Diane there. Let's get your weather before we get some Mark Dolan.
Hello, I'm Marco Britannia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. Over the next few days, we'll see mixed weather conditions across the UK, outbreaks of rain at times in most areas, but equally some warm sunshine too. At the moment, we've got low pressure moving in from the southwest. These weather fronts bringing in outbreaks of rain to many areas, fairly tightly packed isobars too, again, particularly towards the northwest. So we'll see some windy conditions, and that's certainly the case as we head into the overnight period. Outbreaks of rain moving in from the southwest across many areas, tending to become more confined towards the northeast of Scotland as we head into the early hours of Sunday, and also a fairly slow-moving band affecting the central slice of the UK here across Wales into parts of northern England. Pretty warm towards the southeast at 16 or 17 degrees, a little bit fresher towards the north and northwest. As we head into Sunday, then this band of rain will continue to affect parts of Wales, northern England, the North Midlands throughout the day, tending to weaken after, giving some heavy bursts of rain through the morning here. Whereas towards the southeast of the UK, it's a brighter picture, generally fine here throughout the day, and brighter towards the north and northwest with just 1 or 2 showers around at times. In the sunshine towards the southeast, becoming very warm, 23 or 24 degrees, and mid-70s in Fahrenheit, and even towards the north, not bad at 18 Celsius. As for Monday, well, that band of rain will pep up once again across that central slice of the UK, so parts of Wales, the Midlands, northern England, even the southwest of England could see some rain at times on Monday. Brighter with a few showers towards the southeast, and generally turning a bit brighter with scattering of showers as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,